Today we're cooking my dog and I's favorite food, Spam, aka the aloha meat. People's opinions on this product is pretty divided, even my family. I'm obsessed with it, but my judgmental older sister criticized me for eating a can full of chemicals, and then she would proceed to drink a gallon of Diet Coke. I have 5 of the most viral recipes for us, and the first one of course is the Musubi. Let's get started. Unfortunately, this Hawaiian classic requires us to use a machine. I don't like making rice on the stovetop because it's really hard to control the temperature and it kinda drives me cuckoo. We're gonna just follow the normal procedure for making sushi rice here. Japanese cuisine is very prominent in Hawaii. It's so cool to see unique cultures arise out of immigrants and locality. That is 1 cup of rice. I don't wash my rice because I live on the edge like that. And I fill the water to the line where it says 1 cup.
Just use finger.
Now we'll just close it up and let it do its thing. While it's cooking, we'll prepare the rest of the ingredients. First being the sauce. We're making a simple teriyaki, but you can use anything that's sweet and involves soy sauce. So 3 tablespoons of that and 2 tablespoons of mirin and about half a tablespoon of sesame oil. 1/3 of a cup of brown sugar. I don't have it, so I'm using cane sugar. Mix it thoroughly in a sauce pot, bring it to a light simmer, and you're done. Now I'll cut the Spam into slices. I know you guys enjoy it, so I'll give you a little bit of ASMR. We'll put it on a plate and check out this Spam juice. Kinda reminds me of a liquid that always squirts out onto my hand, but I don't use that much Purell anymore. Now, based on the shape of the can, we'll cut out some nori. My knife isn't sharp enough, so I have to use scissors for this. Speaking of seaweed, we also need to grab some of this rice seasoning to enhance the flavor. Once the rice is done, we'll prepare the sushi rice seasoning, which is 1/8 of a cup of sugar, 1/4 of a cup of rice wine vinegar, and half a teaspoon of salt. Pour it all in, and then mix it thoroughly as you fluff the rice. Now on medium heat, we'll sear our pieces of ham till they develop a golden color. It doesn't have to be too intense because we're pouring in the sauce later. And you're about to witness my master chopstick skills. Once they're all evenly colored, we'll put in the sauce and let it reduce a little bit. This is when the Spam piece is going to take on that shiny color. In less than a minute, it should look like this. We'll put it on a plate and move on to the eggs. A little oil, 3 eggs, swirl it around, and now it's time to believe in myself.
Nice job, team.
Using the same can, we'll cut out a couple pieces from the egg and start assembling. Make sure the inside of your can is clean and stuff a plastic foil down there. Load it with rice and press it down so that it becomes like a rectangular shape. Sprinkle just a tiny bit of the rice seasoning on top, layer on the egg and the Spam. Looking pretty good, like a healthy breakfast. In case you haven't noticed, this is my first time making musubi. I'm pretty excited to taste it. Rice to topping ratio is a little off. Kinda looks like the diversity portfolio of Ivy League schools. The cross section looks pretty appetizing. I'm a big fan of rectangular food. Kinda brings order into my life. Now let's give it a taste and rate it 1 through 10. The Spam is sweet and savory, and the egg provides a lot of good texture. The rice builds a great foundation for the toppings, and the acidity from the rice wine vinegar cuts through the fat. Overall, it's a very simple and balanced dish. I'll give it a 9 out of 10. Now we're gonna attempt to make one of the most viewed recipe of all time. So I found this recipe on the TikTok account of Zach Choi, aka Bayashi, with more color grading. The prep is pretty easy. You slice up some ham, avocado, and tomatoes. Don't judge the way I peel avocados, please. Just like he did in the video, we'll slice it into strips and push it flat. I'm gonna try to cut the tomatoes as thin as possible. 3 eggs beat together with a Ligma fork. And I don't have any bread, so I'm just gonna use the burger bun we made last week. Even though usually the tip is my favorite part, but I have to shave it off to make it more flat. Now we'll move everything to the stove just to make sure we don't make any mistakes. We'll watch the video as we do it. So we'll start with a clean pan and 2 slices of cheese. Put the 2 pieces of bread on top of it as it melts. In goes the egg. We'll poke it just a little bit to make sure it cooks faster. And now we'll lay in all the toppings. We forgot to flip it, didn't we? No worries, we'll just put the toppings back to where it was and we'll flip it. Since I did it perfectly for the musubi, I think I can do it here again. I'm starting to have a bad feeling about this. You know, sometimes in life you just gotta commit. Once it's flipped over, we'll add on the toppings, season it with ketchup, and then try to stuff the eggs into the bread. Alright, the next step is closing the sandwich. It's gonna be the most difficult step, so we gotta be really careful. Let's just consolidate everything one last time.
Man, can't anything go right in my life?
You know what, I'll just assemble it on a cutting board because I'm done. Every time I watch Zach eats, I'm incredibly impressed. Sometimes I feel like he's AI generated. And here it is, the ultimate spam sandwich to the best of my abilities. It looks a little pre-digested, but I'm sure it tastes good. Let's give it a taste and rate it 1 through 10. You know, surprisingly, it doesn't taste that bad. Kinda just tastes like a normal ham and cheese sandwich with egg and avocado. The horrendous appearance of it is more of a skill issue. Recipe 8 out of 10, execution 3 out of 10. Now you're about to feel like spring break because we're going to the Dominican Republic. Using the couple pieces of spam left from the last recipe, we'll cut it into small cubes. Ideally, you want to chop up some peppers and onions as well, but I'm too lazy to do that right now. Moving on to the stove, as you can see here, I'm seasoning the water because we're going to cook some pasta. Once the pan is hot, drizzle some oil and in with the spam. Stir it around once in a while to give it some color on all sides. And once the water comes to a rolling boil, we'll drop in the spaghetti. I might have just offended a lot of people, but we got spam in the pan, so I think Nona's authenticity went out the window a long time ago. A lot of online recipes for this dish season things differently, but what they all had in common is just garlic powder, paprika, and cumin. Pour in some crushed tomatoes and let it simmer for 10 minutes. Or you don't have to if you don't want to. At this point, you should also add some herbs and cheese. I just don't have any. We'll put the noodles in a bowl and start spooning in as much sauce as you want. Finally, we'll top it off with some green stuff and white stuff and it's done. This is giving heavy struggle meal vibe, but if you just squint a little bit, you can't tell the difference between this and the regular spaghetti marinara. Kind of reminds me of my friend who's from New Jersey and kept trying to convince me he's Italian, and when I go over to his house for dinner and this is what they eat. After taking a bite, I'm definitely feeling my palms are sweaty, knees weak, arms are heavy. You might not believe me, but this tastes just as good as a regular spaghetti marinara. So both 6 out of 10s. I always see people on Instagram going to the Dominican Republic for spring break and posting foods like this. I can't believe this is what the locals eat. That's some bull. Overall, it's a very decent quick dinner recipe. And now we're gonna move on from the Dominican Republic to Korea. This has to be one of the most popular spam dishes. This dish has a pretty interesting history. The name directly translates to army soup and is not referring to the Korean army, it's referring to the US military. A lot of the ingredients in there are American processed foods that's been brought over during the Korean War, and the locals took those ingredients and combined it with the traditional Korean soup base. And spam was the most prominent protein that was used around that time. So it's pretty much just American meat in Korean stew, which also describes a lot of the couples I see around Soho. So right here, I'm making an extremely simplified version of the army stew. I'm just putting out about a cup of rice cakes, and we also slice some onions, mushroom, spam, and kimchi, as well as an assortment of balls right here. You can pretty much put anything in there. Gochujang is just so strong that it will overpower all other ingredients anyways. So here's basically everything you need to get started. You can just use straight up gochujang, but if you want to make a more authentic sauce, I'll teach you right now. In a container, we'll add 2 tablespoons tablespoons of gochugaru, 1 tablespoon of sugar, 2 tablespoons of mirin, 1 tablespoon of soy sauce, 2 cloves of grated garlic, and as much gochujang as you want. I'm doing maybe like 2 tablespoons here. A good rule of thumb is that if you're mixing gochujang with sugar while cutting things with scissors, you're probably making Korean food. Now we'll move everything to the stove while heating up a pot on medium heat. If you've been watching me from the beginning, you'll realize this is the pot that gave me trust issues. I wonder if whisking the broth will emulsify it better. What the hell just happened? Now we'll put in the onions and start sauteing them till they're lightly caramelized. Once they're softened and turn a little red, we'll add in the kimchi and also the sauce we made earlier. This is basically the foundation of the stew. It has that deep red color and the fermented pepper flavor. We're throwing in rice cakes and then add some water to mix thoroughly. And now it's time to layer in all the toppings. Mushrooms, spam, balls, enough water to cover it, and then stir it just a little bit to preserve the arrangement. And then put on a lid and just let it simmer for 15 minutes. Once it's done, it should look beautiful and nicely arranged just like this. In goes 1 portion of instant ramen and top it off with some American plastic cheese. Turn off the heat and put a lid on and let it steam for about 3 to 4 minutes. And I'm just realizing the only unprocessed ingredients in this stew is just mushroom and water. Time to take a look. Honestly, it looks pretty legit. It looks very homemade, aka ugly. Finally, we'll just garnish it with some scallion and this seaweed seasoning and present to Instagram my Korean army stew. To get a better taste, we're going to transfer a little bit of everything into a smaller bowl and then do the tasting there. A little more of this seasoning, and look at this. This almost looked restaurant level. I'm going to try to grab a small piece of each item so we can have the full bite. Time to give it a taste and rate it 1 through 10. The soup is very savory with a hint of sweetness. It has a lot of the fermented pepper rich flavor. As we expected earlier, the sauce kind of just overpowered everything. Besides the soup, everything else just kind of serves as a texture difference. The dish itself, I'm a big fan of. I order this a lot when I go to Korean restaurants, but I feel like spam isn't really important here, so I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 10. This hot soup may have increased the temperature of my body, but our next dish is gonna raise my cholesterol levels. I think there's a small chance that this next dish is gonna kill me, so we're using 20% less sodium spam. It tastes and smells exactly the same, but placebo effect is gonna make me immortal. So after we cut them into fries shape, we'll dump it into some potato starch. And then we can just follow a pretty standard breading procedure of egg and panko. I bet you didn't know this about me, but I can crack 2 eggs at once with 1 hand. Just watch. Lick my fork all together and throw everything in. I realized that whenever you're coating something in breadcrumbs before frying, it's always good to let it sit there for a little bit. It helps everything settle and stick together better. We're just heating our oil to 350 degrees. Since the spam is already cooked, we just need to get some color on there and take them out. In about 2 minutes or so, it should look nice and golden like this. I have to be honest, deep frying is always fun. Now we're gonna go above and beyond and present the dish in its original packaging. Since they're all pretty unevenly shaped, it's a little difficult to stuff these meat sticks into my can. I'm just trying to get as many inside as possible. So here we have it, spam fries. It kind of looks like the most popular item of a suburban American restaurant in the South with a nice old lady calling you sweetie. And before we dip it in ketchup, let's give it a sound check. Now give a quick dip into ketchup. I'm starting to believe that this is actually potatoes. And then we'll taste it and rate it 1 through 10.
Bon appetit, baby.
It kind of reminds me of one of those deep fried Wagyu sandwiches. It helps you achieve the same effect of after taking one bite, you don't want to eat anything else for the next 4 hours. You can totally make a poor man's Wagyu sando with a piece of Spam. And as you can see here, like many other things, taking both at the same time is how I roll. I'm gonna give this dish an 8.7 out of 10. It's very satisfying and relatively easy to make. After reading your comments from the last video, I've decided to make a Japanese fluffy cheesecake. If there's a video or a recipe that you think is the best, DM me on Instagram or just paste the link in the comments. Alright, thank you.